in 2002. That was the establishment of the Africa Union, and subsequently we've been celebrating the Africa Union Day together with the Organization of Africa Union. So put all together, it's been 62 years. Our conversation this afternoon is going to focus on the continent. We're going to look at how far the continent has actually come, the progress made by the continent, some challenges that needs to be looked at, and how best this can be resolved. Now, if you look at the launch of the Africa Union in the year 2002, specifically in July, which happened in South Africa following a decision that was taking place or took place somewhere in 1999, as I stated. The decision to relaunch the Africa's Pan-African Organization was an outcome of a collective agreement by the African leaders in order to actually realize Africa's potential. And there was the need for us to refocus on things like that. The main thing for the 62nd anniversary for the African Union Day focuses much on reparation. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about issues concerning the continent. But before I introduce our guest here in the studio and let you into various aspects of our conversation, yesterday, which also moved into today, the President of Ghana, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, addressed the entire nation together with the African continent with the Africa Union message. He talked about the theme. He talked about what we need to do as a continent to sustain the progress made so far and correct certain errors and forge ahead as a good continent. Let's take a listen to that. When we return, I'll introduce our guest. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Africans, esteemed leaders, brothers and sisters of the African continent, it is with great honor that I address you today on the occasion of Africa Day 2025. As we gather in Addis Ababa and connect across our vast continent and beyond, we celebrate our resilience, our rich heritage, and our unwavering spirit. This year, our celebration is particularly significant. The African Union has declared 2025 as the year for justice for Africans and people of African descent through reparations. As the AU champion for this critical cause, I'm deeply committed to working with you all to achieve this vital objective. For too long, the legacy of slavery, colonialism, and neocolonialism has cast a long shadow on the lives and progress of Africans and people of African descent. These historical injustices have left deep scars. Reparations are not merely about financial compensation. They're about acknowledging the profound and enduring damage inflicted upon our people. They're about confronting the uncomfortable truths of our past and taking concrete steps to rectify these wrongs. We seek justice, justice that encompasses a comprehensive range of measures, including official and unequivocal apologies from the nations and institutions responsible for perpetrating these historical injustices, addressing the crippling debt burden that continues to stifle economic growth in many African nations, a direct consequence of exploitation and unfair trade practices, providing resources and expertise to empower African nations to achieve sustainable development and participate fully in the global economy, returning stolen artifacts and cultural treasures that rightfully belong to our heritage, investing in the educational initiatives to promote a deeper understanding of African history, culture, and contributions to the world. This is not a simple task. It requires courage, determination, and a unified front. It requires us to engage in meaningful dialogue with those responsible and to advocate tirelessly for our rights. I call upon my colleague African leaders, civil society organizations and youth groups, and members of the diaspora to join hands in this important endeavor. Let us work together to build a future where justice prevails, where the wounds of the past are healed, and where the potential of every African and person of African descent is fully realized. Let Africa Day 2025 be a turning point. Let us reaffirm our commitment to building a continent of prosperity, opportunity, and equality for all our people. Let the pursuit of reparations be a testament to our resilience, our determination, and our unwavering belief in a brighter future. Happy Africa Day. Let us move together, united in purpose, towards a just and equitable future for all Africans and people of African descent.
All right, so that's the president of Ghana, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, addressing the country and addressing the continent on Africa Union Day, which is today. And our conversation, it's going to be based on the union and what's really happening within the union. Like I mentioned earlier, the success stories and the challenges and how best we can move forward. A guest in the studio I have seated next to me, Professor Vincent Adzahlie Mensah, who is an international relations and security analyst. He's joined us. Prof, good to have you. I hope you're well.
Thank you.
All right.
To have you too.
And then next to him is Yaw Anokye Frimpong, who is a lawyer. He's also a historian. Good to also have you. I hope you're well.
Very well, please.
All right. And thank you very much for your time joining us here on Ghana Television. I'm going to start with you, Prof. I don't know where you would like to pick it from OAU to AU, or you would like to move straight from AU to present. How would you describe the continent and the organization's progress so far?
Well, we will say that remarkable progress has been made. Mm-hmm. A lot has happened. A lot has changed. A lot of dynamism has been brought into the organization. Mm. In fact, changing from OAU to AU itself is a big change.
Was it necessary at all?
It was necessary because there are two differences between them. And the main difference is that one is just an organization that was focused on political objectives. Okay. The union is something that epitomizes how we want to work together, speak with one voice, represent the continent with one voice. Mm-hmm. So that's a fundamental shift. The point is that since it changed to the union, a lot of things have been put in place. And if you look at the African Free Trade Area and other things, you will see that a lot have been put in place. The problem is how we have given effect to those things over time, and how we have not significantly departed from some of the deficits that confronted the OAU. If you look at the African Union in terms of the ways in which the European Union acts, you see that we have a very long way to go. And even if you look at the commitment of African countries to the African Union, like if you watch in Ghana today, thank you that GBC is taking this initiative, for example. Many people just know that it's a normal day, and that is it. We used to have it as a holiday. We have stopped that. I don't know the motivations for that, because that alone will have sent a signal that is a day for reflection, a day for thinking, a day for recognizing our identity as Africans and what it means and what we can bring as a contribution to building a united Africa. I don't know why we scrap it off, and I will not debate anybody on that, but I sincerely think that it was a mistake.
Scrapping the holiday for...
Scrapping the holiday was a terrible mistake. And I think that I will be happy if a new government can bring it back, or as a society we can reflect and say we need this back. Because you see, Africa has been down there for a very long time. Africa was plundered over years, and then Africa regained its independence. The freedom fighters who led the liberation of Africa have all been taken down through certain international gimmicks, framing them as evil. The last one to go down was Gaddafi, who was a champion of African unity, who financed the African Union in many different ways, who had projects in every African country, or nearly every African country. Those have been taken down, and it begs the question, why is it that the tiniest little country in Europe with little resources is able to function without dependence on IMF, World Bank, and those things, but the richest African country remains poor, dependent on these global institutions who dictate the ways in which governance is done, the ways in which economic life is organized, the ways in which the central banks operate. Even African countries still have their currencies being printed from outside the country. So this, if you look at it from those angles, and you look at the security challenges facing Africa, the role of Africa in the international economy, that we are still primary producers and exporters of raw materials with little value addition, you think that there is a lot to do. Most importantly, inter-African trade has been very limited. And that is something that we need to look at carefully as Africans and promote trade within Africa. Sometimes it's sad that even till present day, there are calls that you make to African countries that have to go through some country in Europe or somewhere before it gets to the nation. And you are wondering, what is happening with Africa? You look at our internet cables, our fiber optic networks, some of them are managed by foreign interests, and you are wondering what is happening to Africa.
Even if you look at our financial sector, mainly in Africa, it's not really handled by the African.
Everything in Africa is controlled. Our security, even sometimes the national security of a country is coordinated, is basically managed, micromanaged by the security structures of another country. So we don't have national secrets, we don't have national visions, we don't have continental vision. We have it on paper, but it doesn't exist anywhere. And so if you look at the Agenda 2063 that Africa AU has adopted, very good aims, great aims. You look at the theme for this celebration, great. But the point is, who leads the charge in realizing these noble goals? And it appears there's nobody. We are busy dividing ourselves, fighting among ourselves for superiority. And today, I believe that Africa is more divided than it was when the African Union was established.
Oh. Okay, all right. So at least from all what you have said, you said we make remarkable progress. But then if you listen to a lot of the things you've said, it doesn't look like it's a remarkable progress.
Well, remarkable progress because, as I said, the change itself is remarkable.
Okay.
And the ways in which some consciousness have been developed in Africa is a remarkable progress. A lot of African youth today have come to the realization that we need to do something about our situation. And if you look at the trend across Africa, a continent where most of the population is youthful, and some of the commitment, if you see for example, the coup in Niger, and you see the support that the coup had, that tells you that Africans have come to the point where they think that the oppression of the African by Africans through underhand dealings of the neo-colonialists must stop. That itself is a lot of energy that is being brought to the table. Okay. And if you see the interconnectedness among African youth, see at the political level, a lot is not happening. But at the level of the citizens, Africans are beginning to see each other as brothers and sisters. Okay. Forget about what happens in South Africa sometimes. If you see the attempts to unify every aspect of Africa, it's a remarkable progress. Some time ago, nobody was interested in creating a free trade area. Nobody was interested in having joint security discussions. Nobody was interested in joint political discussions and all that. People were just at each other's throat. So a lot has changed, and we have to acknowledge that. Okay. But the point is that a lot remains, maybe much more remains to be done.
That's a lot for us. Although we made some bit of progress.
Yes.
Right. Well, I mean, same question. If you look at the whole continent itself, from OAU to Africa Union, all making 62 years, how would you describe our journey?
The journey, I believe that it has been tortuous, as my colleague was saying, very tortuous, and it will be very difficult, if not impossible, for anybody to describe Africa as having achieved what she deserved. At the same time, it is impossible to write us off. As a friend of mine once said, the fact that at the end of every year, they could go and meet as brothers, more than 50, from different parts of the continent, and then shake hands and come back. It's even enough. And he says that
that's enough.
He says it's something achievable. because in some situations, well, let me go to the beginning. You see, before Ghana had her independence in 1957, we had already had 7 countries that were governing themselves, if I should put it that way: Ethiopia, Sudan, Liberia, then all the countries up there with the exception of Algeria. So 7, and then Ghana joined. The moment Ghana came in, I would say the following year, April, Ghana called for the Conference of Independent African States. December 1958, we had the All African People's Conference, and it was the biggest, the first and the biggest worldwide of a whole continent coming together. Now, after this conference, those who went back, like Nyerere, Kaunda, Lumumba, and others, were able to win independence for their respective countries. Now, Ghana established the Ghana-Guinea Union. Then, when Mali had its independence, it joined it, and it became the Ghana-Guinea-Mali Union. In 1961, through Nkrumah's political marriage to Madame Fathia of Egypt, he was able to win the hearts of all the Northern African countries. As a result, a very radical group known as the Casablanca Group was formed. The moment it was formed with the aim of bringing Africa together to have one continental government, that is a continental union government, other countries such as Nigeria, Liberia, together with all the French-speaking countries, came together and formed the Liberia Group. This was what was going to divide the continent. Then the most experienced of them, or who at the time was also the most neutral, His Selassie invited them to his capital. And when they were able to exchange ideas, those who needed to tone down, those who needed to come up to the middle line, they did. So there was a win-win situation for them. Then the OAU, you called it the Organization of African Union. It's rather the Organization of African Unity.
Okay.
And then you addressed me, Yaw Anokye Frimpong. If you had added doctor, I would have been happier.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Once you are calling somebody professor.
Well noted.
As you are calling somebody professor. If you drop titles, fine. Yeah. But let's move on.
That's fair enough. I mean, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Thanks for the correction. Anyway.
Yeah. So it was formed. You know, so the beginning that I am talking about is the fact that at least Africa has been able to put something down that we can point at, so that if there is, for example, border dispute between Ghana and Togo, or Ghana and Ivory Coast, immediately we know where the matter can be resolved. And then also, if, for example, France, Russia, or any country decides to test nuclear bombs on our continent, we have one voice. So with that, we have achieved a lot. But there is a place where I actually differ from what the...
said.
Yeah. You see, Prof was talking about the fact that changing the name from Organization of African Unity to African Union is itself an achievement. For me, psychologically, sentimentally, I believe it's a big deviation.
How?
And at the same time, it becomes neo-colonial. Why I say that is this. You see, we had the European Economic Community. You know, it was only for economic purposes for countries of Western Europe. Then it moved on to the extent that now they've got a single passport, they've got one voice almost in whatever they are doing.
The strongest blocks we have in the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, so they are not afraid to call themselves European Union because they are moving towards unity. And in the case of Africa, because of that frenzy, you know, that what you possessed all of us, that Africa must unite, all of us must come together. It was not strange that from the very word go, we adopted the word unity. And that, as I said, was very sentimental, that any time you heard the word Organization of African Unity, it was enough to tell you that it stood for the unity of the continent. Then after some years, you know, instead of removing African unity to become, let's say, United Africa.
Which was what Gaddafi was calling.
Envisaging United Africa.
United Africa.
You understand?
He doesn't understand why Africa can actually not be that united.
United.
Yeah.
And then now you decide to drop the word unity. You know, Ashanti was great because it was united. United by everything. Otherwise, they could have been like any other ethnic group in Ghana or Africa. But simply because of their unity under one chief. Unlike all others, you go to Western region, you have 1,001 paramount chiefs, Volta region, Central region, not everywhere. But they alone, just one person, you know. So when that voice speaks, it's like entire nation speaking. Yeah. And now Africa decides to look at what the EEC started doing and then coming to terms with them to call our OAU AU. For me, it was a very big drop. Very, very big drop. And I hope, as my friend was saying, that we would get a government and we don't have to pray for any government when you have one. I believe this government will do a lot. You know, this young man who came in, what's his name? Traore. You know, even though he came from a coup d'etat background, which is condemnable,
yes.
How come that the youth, as my brother was saying, of Africa, you know, have come together to champion his cause? You know, to push him forward. The Ghanaians have been saying that if you climb a good tree, everybody gives you a push. You understand? So I believe that it is not late. My brother said that he didn't understand why the government decided, you know, to freeze the AU day.
For you.
In fact, years ago, when we had 6 March as a holiday, Republic Day as a holiday, and then the OAU Day. It helped students to learn, let me even call it pupils, to learn from the teachers why today is Friday, Monday don't come to school. It is OAU Day. And then the pupils was why, and that is when you have to narrate the story of Ghana, Africa, the entire continent, and it will become part of their upbringing. And then why Independence Day? They cherish it. Yeah. Why, Republic Day? So if you think that the Organization of African Unity, which today is OAU, actually did not matter or does not matter, and so it's a waste of time celebrating it and throwing it away as a holiday, I believe that in the African language, you say it's like a curse. You understand? But it's not difficult to reverse a case. Yes. The previous government era, NPP, he didn't want to mention. Yeah, I realized that. You know, you should say that Nana Akufo-Addo changed. You should say that, and you should also say that he was more interested in 5th August for so-called, founders of Ghana, rather than the continent. Yeah. And so on such a day, you wouldn't have seen him wasting his time to deliver a speech. So the fact that our president could wake up,
as our current president.
Yes, our current president could wake up to give a speech in honor of the real founding fathers of Africa, and then talking to our nation about what we are supposed to do as an aspiration, I believe is just a step towards getting back the holiday. And it is also a step towards building a very fine relationship with the other members of the continent. But as my brother rightly said, we have a very long way to go, because in almost every African country, the learning from the new political dispensation blowing everywhere, you will realize that if we have 2 major parties, one of them is purely Pan-African and wants Africa to unite. You understand? And that government wouldn't want to have too much to do with the Western world. Then the other one would be the exact antithesis
of the other.
Yes, the exact opposite or antithesis of the other. So it was not surprising for Nana Akufo-Addo to believe that a Republic Day, or the
African
Union Day, just a nuisance to the Africa. So the threat is that if we have the
Maybe
NDC
it wasn't really as a holiday, but at least it was a day that you can actually commemorate. It was a commemorative
There's no need to
day.
commemorate. It should be a holiday. You see, it's like this. When you come across somebody like, let's say, Traore,
Yes.
you know, championing the cause of Burkina Faso,
Yes.
and then you come across somebody like Rollins doing a similar thing in Ghana, for us, it's nothing. Why it is nothing is that, how did we come under the British? They introduced a system called indirect rule.
Yes.
Indirect rule meant that they themselves, they were colonizing us half-heartedly.
Yes.
So the moment they felt they had made enough,
Yes.
it wasn't difficult to go away.
Yes.
In the case of the French, the indigenous system, the direct rule system,
Yes.
you know, was to convert the African into European.
European, yeah.
So that is why to this day, they don't have their own currency. It is printed in France, and that's why it's called CFA, the FA Français Africain. So that's the Communauté Français Africaine. So whatever the end, if you go there, they tell you their own history that unlike Ghana, where people freely speak Ga, Ewe, Zema, Chi, those things, and almost the whole country is speaking Chi. In their system, the French consciously destroyed African institutions, including chieftaincy and language, and anything that will bring them together. To this day, a child born today in Ivory Coast will speak French, you know. And so when you go to Ivory Coast, do you know that the dollar and pound, and for that matter, cedi, are not recognized? They are not. You can't change the dollar, the cedi, and the pound anywhere in Ivory Coast. It is only the EU. So how do you call it?
Euro.
Euro.
It is just the euro. Whereas when you go to a small country such as Liberia, you can change any currency in the world. So that should tell you that mentally, those people are not liberated. And so when we have governments in English-speaking countries such as Ghana that also feel they have to associate with what is happening over there, then it is sad.
You talked about the name from the Organization of Africa Unity to the Africa Union that, well, you wish that had not happened. But one will also argue that it's just a change of name. But if you look at the principles for the OAU and then the principles and values for the AU, it's actually the same. Because the principles have not necessarily changed.
Yes, my worry is the fact that somebody was called EU has progressed from EEC to EU. You know, mere economic togetherness to a level of economic, social, and political integration. So they can proudly call themselves European Union.
Yeah.
And then you were lucky, you catapulted yourself to a near a political, social, and economic integration. And so you called yourself Organization of African Unity. And you decide to copy them. That's my worry. I don't want us to otherwise copy anybody. Yeah.
Okay.
If it had been, let's say you are dropping OAU, it could be anything else, but not copying the very people who stole our artifacts. And I hope you are going to talk about that.
We'll come to that.
You know, the very people who colonized that, the very people who enslaved us. How do you copy them? How do you copy them? I believe philosophically it's a non-starter.
You should have maintained the OAU.
You maintain and then you move away from them
But
completely.
not to actually
not
one
to
that resembles
the very people who disintegrate and continue to disintegrate you, you know, to destroy you.
Okay. Prof, moving forward, if you look at the AU, it had its vision as an integrated, prosperous, peaceful Africa, which is driven by its own citizens and representing a dynamic force in the global area. Now, this has a lot of things in it. Have we been able to, first of all, achieve that integration we're looking for? That prosperity we are talking about? The peaceful aspect of the African, where the citizens themselves own the continent and with it dynamic factors?
Thank you. I think, first let me add something to what Prof said. You know, what I said that changing from OAU to African Union itself is an achievement. I said that on a number of counts. For example, as Doctor said, one of the things that Africa needs, which the founding fathers, particularly Kwame Nkrumah and some others, push for, is a united African leadership. a positioning of Africa as one voice, speaking to important issues. And if you look at the EU model, you will see that they copied that from Africa indirectly.
Yes, yes.
And today, as we speak, they have the president of the European Commission, who practically works like the president of Europe. And sometimes, even when national countries disagree, Europe speaks. And it's as if it overshadows what national countries will do. If Africa can get to that level, for me, that is what I see. That issue,
but can we ever get to that level?
That's the question. That's why I said that it seems that much progress have been made, but a lot remains to be done. Because until and unless we get there, every effort we are making will not work. Because you see these tiny countries all over from Africa, when they are speaking at the UN General Assembly, nobody even listens to them. Even if Iran is going to speak at the UN General Assembly, these people want to hear. See, here Ghana is going to speak. Nobody will be there. No European president will be there. No American president will be there to listen. But if we were to be united, like Gaddafi was assuming, like Kwame Nkrumah, Nyerere, and the rest were assuming, we will have a voice that will thunder.
Do we have that kind of leadership, or do we have that kind of leader? I mean, we've talked about Gaddafi, we've talked about Nyerere, we've talked about Nkrumah, there's Lumumba too, and I mean, those times we saw that energy, we saw that individual dynamism that is supposed to bring the continents together. As we speak today, do we have the likes of such leaders, or even a replica of such leaders that can champion such an agenda?
You have made the point indirectly. At the moment, Africa is lost. At the moment, Africa is lost. That's why some of us commended President Mahama, for example, on the initiative he took in trying to deal with the Sahelian nations and trying to speak to them when the rest of Africa is saying you are ostracized and those kind of things. That leadership that drove the beginnings of Africa is no more. That's why I made the point that the last person who was championing that agenda was Gaddafi, and he was taken down. Thabo Mbeki wanted to try, he was taken down. Actually, and that's the problem Africa has. But you see, there's something, a force more powerful than one leader emerging. And that is what we've been saying here. The youth. The youthful population of Africa is in search of that leader. And so if you are in any African country, you are a government, you are a president, and you are not resonating with them, they are going to vote you out. And if anybody overthrows you, never mind the kind of disdain we all have towards coup d'etats, they are going to support the person. And that is the lesson African leaders need to learn, that change is inevitable. We will get there, but how we will get there, when we will get there, nobody knows. Now, on the question...
Let's just hold on with that question. Let me pick, similar thoughts from Doc concerning the kind of leadership, whether we have it like the ones we had then, Nkrumah, Nyerere, Gaddafi, Lumumba, and the others who were championing that continental unity. Do we have the same today?
Well, I would say no. No, because the situation then was different from what we have today. You know, so you will not have somebody like Nkrumah. You may not have Nyerere or Gaddafi today. But the good thing is that when you're a good leader, or let's say a religious leader, you won't be there forever.
Yes.
But when you train your disciples, they become apostles.
Yes.
And then do better even than you.
Yes.
You know, Nkrumah and others have this, apostles now. You know, in West Africa, at least look at the way Mahama is conducting himself. You can see that this man is an apostle of our previous leaders, and therefore we can look up to him, even though in a more moderate sense. But I would say that it is far better to be seen to be following France, because Africa should be able to say that openly. Because what France does, Britain does not do. And Italy is completely against it, that you cannot read your own budget unless you have got something from Ivory Coast, Senegal, and Gabon. You know, so when we have people like Mahama, we have people like Traore, you know, who are trying to build a system of self-reliance, I think Africa has got hope. Okay. Then go to Southern Africa. The youth, as my brother was saying, Julius Malema. You know, he's always championing the cause of Pan-Africanism.
Someone that Donald Trump doesn't like.
Yes, so it shows, you see, whatever you do, and you get as a black man, and you get a white man praising you, it means that you are doing a disservice to your own people. A disservice. Nkrumah wrote it long ago, that any time he saw the West praising him, then he felt he was not doing something wrong somewhere. And then you also look at Cyril Ramaphosa. You can see that he's a man of himself. So we have people like that. And then I mentioned Traore already. So I believe that. And then the PLO Lumumba, you know, he's an advocate going around speaking to the youth. And as we all know, from this, the famous Ghanaian band, what's the name? Osibisa, that we are going. We don't know when we will get there, but we know we will get there. Because many years ago, we had only a few people who were assembled and destroyed, like Lumumba, like Nkrumah, and others. Now we have so many people who have become conscious and are educating Africans. All we need, all Africa needs, is to be given the right syllabus to learn that when you go to Germany, you saw their primary school syllabus, and it includes mining and environmental studies. When Germany hasn't got gold, diamond, manganese, bauxite. So it means that after completing even secondary school, a German guy can come to Ghana and take over our gold. We should have courses relating to that, courses relating to anti-corruption, courses relating to technology at the very basic level. And then also leadership. We need courses in leadership for people to know that when you are a leader, you should be able to lead your people without thinking of going to take loans in order to balance your budget. The moment you do that, then I can assure you that my 90-year-old mother can even rule the country.
Because if you can also go for a loan.
Go for a loan. You understand? Anybody can go for a loan. But it is not anybody who will be able to invest and get a yield. And from yield, profit, and surplus. These are the things our children should be taught at the very basic level. And when we do that, I believe in less than 20 years, we will produce people greater than Nkrumah and others.
Okay, all right. And Prof, back to my question then. An integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa, driven by its own citizens and representing a dynamic force in the global arena. That's the vision for a...
Now, first, Africa at the moment is not driven by its citizens. Second, Africa is not integrated. I wouldn't say that Africa is not prosperous. We have the resources. If the hands are lifted off Africa today, if an African leader will stand for his nation today, that nation will become prosperous within, I wouldn't say hours, minutes. See Niger, the example from Niger. Something that could be sold 200 euros was being bought by France at, if we are talking against first ways, you know, first ways. And that was how Niger came to be described as the poorest at some point in the world history. That is one of the poorest nations on earth. The moment France hands off uranium, and you know uranium is a very important thing for the production of nuclear energy, bombs and all that. And France was just squeezing life out of Niger like that. So for prosperity, all African countries have the potential to be prosperous. Look at DR Congo, one of the poorest nations, but DR Congo has enough to take care of the whole of
it. Actually has almost every natural resources in the world in that country. Every raw materials in that country.
So if you look at it from the angle of integration, Africa is completely divided. Africa is completely lost. Africa is completely at a stage where it is difficult to bring Africans together to think about Africa. But I like it that the ordinary African is getting more and more integrated. See, there are Nigerian businesses that are going around Africa. Look at something like EcoBank. It's a Pan-African bank trying to achieve the dreams of Africa. Okay, that itself is something very important we need to look at. Look at South African companies, MTN and the rest, trying to make strides on the African continent. That is important. How we support those is what the West doesn't want. And the West continues to divide Africa. You see, the shiny example in Burkina Faso we are talking about, watch any Western media. They portray him as having a fake personality, and that he's covering up, he's arresting political opponents and all that.
Even watching Western media is even far. It's even within the continent.
Yes.
There are some who don't like what he's doing.
They are agents.
And there are some parliaments within Africa who are totally against what he's doing. So not even far from Europe. It's just within.
That's why I was telling Nigeria the other day that Nigeria, you have Boko Haram, you couldn't handle it. And you were ready to work with France, mobilize troops to intervene in Niger. I mean, sometimes when you think about the kind of leadership in Africa, the way they think, the way they govern, you think that a president in Ghana will be thinking about how to intervene militarily in Niger. When you cannot put food on the table of your citizens are suffering, they cannot have access to good health care. Teachers have completed school, they cannot get schools to teach, while schools remain without teachers. Nurses have completed school. We don't have money to build hospitals. If we build hospitals under IMF conditionalities, we are not able to employ them. But you can find money to give to soldiers, send them to Niger. I was glad they didn't go, because a lot would have died. Because I don't know how they were going to fight in Niger. You know, so if you look at it from those angles, the ways in which even Malema that you mentioned, look at how he's distasted in some African capitals. So if you look at it from that score, Africa remains ununited and integration is far away from us. But prosperity, we have hope that this continent have resources that we can use to build this continent at any point in time. If you look at the level of capital flight leaving Africa to the West, even if we just put in place a policy, for example, the gold board thing, it has come to change some dynamic. If we put in place a policy that, see, you can come and mine in Ghana, we don't care if you are from US or wherever, but you cannot repatriate the money to your country. Countries like Dubai, those are some of the policies they put in place. And that if you have a company, a certain percentage of it has to be Ghanaian owned. We are happy to have foreign investment, but you cannot have foreign investment.
I think we have a
beyond
with the whole local content thing in here too.
It's not significant.
But,
yes.
I agree.
But so if we put in place policies that will prevent capital flight significantly, to the extent that any money made in Ghana, at least 80% of that money will stay in this country. Banking rates will reduce. Loans will have a low interest rate. Go to any European country, 3% is like a huge percentage. You come here, 20%, sometimes 30%, 33%, and you wonder if the person takes the money, how is the person even going to pay? And so, in that score, Africa is not integrated. Prosperity is far away from us if we remain on this path. But Africa driven by Africans. See, my brother, what stake do you have in the affairs of this country? We're lucky yesterday, Mahama came and said, you can speak. Okay? Some time ago, it was even, like if you sit on this set, you can be talking on this set and somebody will take phone and call you and say, my brother, what are you talking about? Or you live here and somebody will query you for that. You know, why are we doing that to ourselves? Okay? So sometimes in African capitals, for people to even comment on national affairs, it becomes a problem. Not because you are a threat to national security, but because one strong man doesn't want you to speak about him or her. And it's not that this person is serving the interests of the nation. This person is actually against the interests of the nation. And it doesn't want anybody to talk about it. So you come to an Africa where we remain exporters of raw materials. Now, I was hurt by something when Ghana found crude oil in Kufuor's time. And somebody made a comment that Tema Oil Refinery doesn't have the capacity to refine that oil. And so we will need to export that oil in raw form and import refined oil. And I was like, is this nation going mad or what? If they don't have the capacity, build the capacity.
But that will take time.
It will take time, but the return on investment is what you look at. If it will take 5 years to build that capacity, let's build it. Let's not say because of that we are going to be exporting. Okay? So if we operate like that, you will see that African economies have been hijacked. As you are here on this table, if we are to talk about big businesses in Ghana, we'll be mentioning the multinationals. Okay? Jata Cement has come up recently. But how many people even know where it is? How many people can find it to buy? Okay? We have destroyed the pillars of our economy that are owned by Africans. And we are not willing to invest in their growth and development. So African businesses are dying in Africa. I watched something the other day. They said there was going to be a new city built somewhere. And somebody is saying Ghana cannot afford it. And I'm asking,
where's our administrative capital?
What do you mean by Ghana cannot afford it? What does it take to build that city? You see, the process of decongesting Accra is something that will drive economic growth. And I'll tell you why. We have never calculated the cost of people being in traffic. For you to come to work here, when you have to leave home.
That's true.
And for you to get home, how many hours are you going to sleep and come back? And when you come, what is the impact on your productivity?
Aside even that monetary cost we've not put to it, we've also looked at its implication on our health.
Our health, our socioeconomic infrastructure, everything. Okay? So you have an African that is dictated to by people, the same people we pushed away. Today, Africa is governed by the World Bank, is governed by the IMF, is governed by the UN Security Council, is governed by every international organization. Prof was talking about education. We need to decolonize our own education system. And that's one thing that I cherish about Zimbabwe. We have not mentioned Mugabe as somebody who stood for Africa. If you go to Zimbabwe, you look at their education system. You look at their national pride. Zimbabweans can send, the average Zimbabwean will send text message to their colleague in Shona, in Ghana. How many of us can send even message to our brothers and sisters in our local languages? Okay. We said that Ghana is an agrarian economy and that 60% of the people are employed in the agric sector. We don't teach agric in schools. From the basic school, somebody was telling me the last time, it's in integrated science or something. I said, are we crazy? So you see that as a people, we have not found our identity as Africans. And then to build our institutions on our Africanness. So for example, our health system is not built on an African philosophy of health. Our security is not built on an African philosophy of security. Even this broadcasting is not built on an African philosophy. And that was something Kwame Nkrumah was championing. That we need an African philosophy of doing things. How do Africans govern themselves? How do Africans do education? So we are ready to learn. It's an interconnected world. But you see, if you look at the way China Iran, Russia, those countries, even Japan, South Korea, if you look at the way they developed, you see that they had a blend of things, but the foundation of everything they were doing is their local philosophy of things.
Okay.
And Africans need to get to that level. If we get to that level, that is when it will be difficult for the neo-colonialists to understand the basis of our argument. Go to our parliament. Even at the courts, lawyer, you may know that better than me. Sometimes when they are cited, I say to go and cite a case in Canada to come and defend a case in Ghana. Have to cite a case in UK to come and defend a case in Ghana. And so
it's part of the profession.
It's part of the profession, we agree. But where is the African philosophy of justice? And how is our court system built on that? Almost all our laws are modeled along a British system, the English legal system. Our governance is modeled along their system. Our everything is modeled along their system. How can we understand and do it effectively?
But I mean, with these things you've talked about, is it too late to change them?
You need, you see, that's why...
Or can it actually be changed at all?
It is possible. You see, one of the things is sustainability in governance. So, for example, by the Western democratic philosophy, so Doc talked about it in some way. Now, Muhammad has a certain philosophy of how to give power to the people. Is that shared knowledge? So tomorrow, if he leaves, and then another person comes and doesn't share that philosophy, then we go back and start afresh. So the beginning point of it is an education system that socializes people. Somebody gave an example. Sorry to give this example. I hold myself to it, not GBC. That you go to Israel, and because they want people to understand that the Palestinian is an enemy, okay? You may have an exam question that says, I have 15 Palestinians, I shot to kill 10 of them. How many more are left to be killed? You see, there's a certain kind of national consciousness being
towards a particular agenda.
Yes. So if
that's what the Nkrumah actually was trying to do, not necessarily with the example you gave, though. Just trying to rally everybody around towards a particular agenda and a focus for us to move to. But of course, others also thought otherwise, that let's say we need to have that independence of mind and not move towards where you want us to go to.
Yeah, but so if we are to come to that point where Africa will be led by Africans, we need to consciously teach African philosophy in our education system. We need to consciously plant it in our social dealings. We need to consciously infuse it into our governance processes. For example, there was a time when a blind man was appointed as minister for chieftaincy and all. And people were like, no, to be a chief, you don't have to be
visually impaired person.
You don't have to be disabled in any way. And then you put a disabled person for chiefs to deal with. You see, when we promote that kind of anathema in our society, and we just see how we pick aspects of our social life that were things that have to be challenged and discarded and push them to the forefront, rather than look at how we can use the strengths in our society to build a society. For example, let's look at it this way. If in Ghana,
yes,
we really, really want to make progress, what are the codes in our culture? Let's identify a number of them and say, what are the things that unite us than divide us? And how have those things formed the foundation of Ghanaian society over time? Chieftaincy is a very important thing. We have established a national house of chiefs, district or local houses of chiefs and all that. The point is, what is their engagement in governance? We have a council of state. That council of state is a mimicking of how traditionally the chief has a council of elders helping the person. Now, if we will give power to that Council of State to have some sustainability and have some national character, then we can use that institution to build a certain political culture. If you look at Iran, they just did one thing. They said the Ayatollah is the supreme leader. So you do your politics, but in the end, this religious figure will have the final say. So you see that no matter which government comes to power,
you think there's still a need for the Council of State?
For me, Council of State is an important nomenclature we have developed.
Okay.
The point is how we identify the members, how we use them, and the power they have, and how they, as individuals, will be depoliticized. Okay? Because if you look at the framing of the Council of State, there is a former Chief Justice, there is a former that, and then regional representation, so that we take care of this country. Because you have a National Development Planning Commission that nobody hears of, nobody knows what they do, nobody knows what we use their inputs for and all that. So if Africa would develop, African states have to identify what makes somebody an African. As we are here, if somebody meets us on the street and say, what's the difference between a Ghanaian and a Nigerian? We may not be able to say it. But what is the difference between an African? For me, that is okay. What's the difference between an African and European? Is it just the skin color?
Just the skin color.
Or what? We need to identify the things that make somebody an African. Because there are so many Africans that are not Africans.
Okay.
In fact, they are enemies of Africa. And they are people who are conniving and colluding every day to destroy Africa for their personal gains. If we can address those kind of challenges, we can have an Africa that is led by Africans. But for now, there's not an African being led by Africans. But even if you go to AU sessions, and see, watch any of them. You have all these foreign interests sitting there directing things and all. I was alluding to the ECOWAS Agenda
2063.
And you see that that thing was even sponsored by GIZ. And then you ask yourself, so there's no institution in Africa that can sponsor this.
Let's make some bit of progress. If you're just joining us, this is GBC News of the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation. It's a special program for today, which is the Africa Union Day. We're celebrating 62 years of this beautiful union for this great continent, when the African countries are actually together to forge one common identity and, of course, progress for this beautiful continent of ours. And we've been talking about the challenges so far and how best we can work around it to move faster and ensure that we reach that kind of vision for the union. The theme for this year's celebration is Justice for Africans and People of African Descent through Reparation. We'll be talking about that shortly, but our guest is still here with us in the studio, and we're talking issues concerning the continent. Doc, let's talk about, with other things that Prof has touched on, let's talk about trade. There's the African Continental Free Trade Area. Is that enough for us to know that, yes, it's about time that we are getting the whole idea of trading among ourselves? And are we beginning to reap that kind of benefit?
Well, I wouldn't say it's enough, but it's a very sound beginning for the continent, because Africa as a continent, when it comes to intra-African trade, is not up to 15%. It's not up to 15%. In fact, when you look at the French-speaking countries, whatever they have for non-French-speaking countries on the continent to be able to purchase is what France does not need.
Yeah.
It's what those things France does not need is what or are what we get here. So if we are able to reverse it, and as the Continental Free Trade is envisaging that by the year 2040, at least 50% of intra-African trade would have been materialized. And once it has been set up, it has helped us to understand that first and foremost, we do not have to encourage multinational entities operating here. It should be African multinational groups. Like, for example, MTN, that my colleague mentioned. It's multinational, but it is African. So if we can get that, there was a time when we had this company, Tata Brewery.
Yes.
It was exporting beer to almost the whole of West Africa. Kasapreko is attempting that. If we are able to work on the issue of capital and then currency, because it is part of the Africa Continental Free Trade Objective to ensure that intra-African trade is done or conducted using local currency.
But by saying having multinational companies which are Africans, that means that we are closing the door to the ones that are non-Africans.
That is the aim.
Okay.
That is the aim, because...
Would that not, in a way, defeat the whole idea of the world also becoming a global place and allowing everybody to come in?
The world is a global place.
I mean, we are criticizing Donald Trump for doing a similar thing.
Yes,
though, but
so that's what I was going to say. If it is a global place,
yes,
and Donald Trump believes that countries that are trading with America are not helping America enough, and so they are going to impose heavy tariffs on them. Why don't you come together and then freeze tariffs among African trade so that we will do about 10 America? Because at the end of it all, we will be talking about African technology. You see, we have problems and think European goods, and for that matter, Western goods are better only when you are making comparison. Many years ago, Russia had its own brand of cars called Lada.
Yes.
Lada. And because it was then a very closed society, whether rich or poor, everybody was using Lada. So because of the lack of comparison, everybody was happy using Lada. As a result, first and foremost, there will be very little rush towards the dollar, pound, euro in order to purchase better cars or beautiful cars from outside. And then two, it would increase the need for Lada. You understand? Because everybody will have to be chasing Lada. And then three, it will create jobs. And above all else, it will help in technology growth. This is what Africa is supposed to do. We don't have to look at how beautiful Toyota is, Land Cruiser, and then our Range Rover. No. When you go to Ivory Coast, you know, France has done that to ensure that you purchase only from France. The France cars are Citroën, Peugeot, and then another one I've just forgotten. And if you don't want that and you want Japanese car or American car, then you will pay a very huge amount of money as freight. You understand? So always when France produces goods, there's ready market for it. This free trade among Africans is just looking at that. We call it free trade area. So it helps to build African division of labor and what do you call it, specialization. He mentioned something and I like it very much, you know, just in passing, but it's highly important. He said that when you go to Europe, very small countries that would not have been able to exist on the African continent are making it. Look at Belgium, look at Switzerland. You understand? Do you know what happens if, for example, America is building their type of airplane? What is it, the American one?
I think it's Boeing.
When they are building the airplane, they've made their system such that you would need a certain chip or component only from Holland. If you are building a ship, you will need a certain component only from Switzerland or Belgium. As a result, the more the bigger economies like America, Germany, France, Britain are flourishing, the smaller ones too are not left behind. But in the case of Africa, the richest African country is still a very poor country in the world. Well, simply because we have made ourselves commodity specialists. We have to add value. You understand? Add value. When you, Ghana, if you want cocoa, you get every cocoa here. But if you want chocolate, you must be rich before you can get chocolate. This is what the Continental Free Trade is seeking to reverse, and also to ensure that there will be free movement of goods and people, capital, and then all other things you can imagine. So once it has been set up, I believe that all we need is to promote it. The only problem that Africa has got is the fact that our economies are being controlled from outside. And so, for example, if you want to buy goods from Kenya and France is controlling you, or it's France that is giving you the loan to buy the goods, then France has got the right to tell you where you should buy
the goods from.
So the time comes when Africa would have to say that enough is enough. We are eating Ghana, made in Ghana rice, made in Ghana sugar, made in Ghana this. You know, when Nkrumah was overthrown, the first thing that was done consciously was to bring in a lot of sugar, lots of quantities of sugar from outside the country, well polished. And then people were made to believe, because they were indoctrinated, that Ghana didn't cry. So when he goes to the shop to buy sugar, is it the outside one or the Ghana one? So as a result, the sugar factory, they started losing. If it is matches, whatever he is buying, if it is even rice, you know, the rice one is a very common and the best example. I don't know from where people say Ghana didn't mobile. There are some pebbles or whatever it is. So why don't you complain to the company so that if they have the facility to put up a machine, you know, to harvest it and then to make it available, package it so that it will be consumable, the little mistakes associated with will be cured, rather than saying that it is Ghana one, so I won't buy. And then sometimes they will say that it is dirty. And let me tell you, I read a certain book, it says that two friends met in the UK. One was, I think, a Chinese. And the other one, Englishman. He went to buy made in China, a Japanese rather, made in Japan, iron, present iron. And within 3 days, it had become defective. He dumped it and went to buy another one. And his friend said, this is the second time. And he said, even if it is 3 times, I would have to do it. He said, why? Because it is my country. It is from my country. It is from my country. If all of us are going to develop Ghanaian taste, African taste, and then eschew foreign ones, then when you go to KFC, for example, you will have to take cassava chips. You will have to take yam chips rather than potato imported from somewhere. You understand? If you're able to change this way, it will be able to.
That's a nice business idea.
Yes, that is, and you will do it only when the government imposes tariffs, like this man is doing, Trump is doing on what do you call potato chips. So when he imposes tariffs on it and then removes every tariff on goods coming from Ivory Coast, Burkina Faso, Kenya, all those countries, Africa will unite, at least economically. We will unite economically. And then also be able to put our resources to work. It is said that God created the world in 6 days. After that, he rested. The meaning is that you have to make use of what he has given you. He's never going to take an inch from you. You see people talking and they say, oh, when you go to Volta region, the land is not good. It's full of water. When Israel has no water and they are able to drain the desert so that they become the greatest importer of dates, when this country, China, would have to draw water from wherever and create water banks before they can produce rice, and they are the world's leading producer of rice. God has given you water free.
Israel even has one of the best irrigation systems in the world. They have given
you water free, and you are saying that you are complaining. Every year, this country, Burkina, you know, when they distill the dam, you know the havoc it caused. Look at when it started. When they break the Bagre Dam, any serious country, such as Ghana, you take advantage of that. Just do what you call water banking. You know, put up canals so that the moment it is destroyed and the water is coming, it becomes hallelujah for Ghana.
We're still spilling water from the Wager down there.
Yes.
We are still spilling it.
When in fact you can make very good use of it so that there will be 12 years agriculture going on. Then when you have 12 month year-round agriculture taking place, let me tell listeners, viewers, that an NGO, international NGO, has seen that that is the only thing that will cure the Kusasi Nenumba conflict. Because if in the 12 months of the year, the youth is so busy planting cashew or yam or cassava or whatever, and there is a big truck over there loading, and he is getting CFA, Naira, CD, whatever, you think somebody can tell him that collect a gun and go and shoot your brother? So until we have been able to utilize the land that God gave us within the 6 days that he created the earth, we will continue to wander about.
All right, okay. Prof, still on trade. It's even difficult for Ghana to trade with Burkina Faso. Even difficult. Recently, I mean, sometimes when we had challenges with onions because of certain sanctions or impositions that Nigeria had to put in place there. We had trucks at the border stuck in order. This is all African countries. In having that fluid trade, yes, the Continental Free Trade Area is there. Where do we actually start from? Who should take that bigger initiative? Because if up till now we're still struggling to trade among ourselves, what difference would this trade area actually provide for us?
Well, first, we need a liberation of the mind. African mentality needs to change. Because as a lawyer said, it's as if we think that anything African is inferior in the first place. And if you take the case of Ghana...
Does it come with slavery?
Yes.
It's
part of it, yes.
It's part of the slavery.
Slavery is built on racism.
Okay.
There is a theory that discusses how when the Europeans came, before they left, they used a concept of invented anthropology.
Okay.
What they did was to make the African like an European and destroy African cultural values, systems of thinking, ways of doing things, which Doctor said about the French-speaking countries. That was more serious than countries such as Ghana. But across the board, they did something like that. And because of that, we have come to hate ourselves.
Yes.
And we have come, you hear this concept of Ghanaian hospitality, where people, sometimes I represent it this way. You have your wife in the house, the plate that in which she hasn't cooked for you, when the stranger comes, he takes that plate as if the stranger
is giving the best.
Yeah. And you see how it translates. You go to your hometown, you want land, they will say there's no land. But when one person looking different from you is holding to a few dollars, hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars, they will find land and give to the person. And it happens across the board. So our mentality is against ourselves. That's number one.
That's how come we can actually bring Chinese in to come and destroy
anything.
Our lands and pollute it, and we are fine.
You report, and then the system will protect the Chinese against you, the local. In fact, they will get security people to protect the person against the community. So that's one problem. Now, as a result of that, people think that if you wear a shoe from Burkina Faso or a shirt from Nigeria, it's inferior to a shirt made in Italy, in England, in New York, wherever. So that is the foundation of the problem. But there are things that we can do among ourselves. Like onions. Nobody will bring onion from America to come and sell in Ghana. Okay. So that we can deal among ourselves.
But it's not happening.
It's not happening. Why is it not happening? It's not happening because even the free trade area we are talking about, the idea has not been brought down to the level of institutions. I'm operating at the level of institutions, not even at the level of the individual. Go to Ghana-Togo border. To cross as a Ghanaian, it's a problem, it's hell. Go to a Seme border to enter Nigeria. see is hell. Go to any African country, you will see even common passport, visa. We can't create visa-free area in Africa because some African countries think that it's much better. Like you take a country like Morocco. At some point, they even wish that they were not part of Africa. They were part of Europe. You get it? So under such circumstances, the free trade area is important, but giving effect to it requires political decisions that happen with politicians who have to think that they are Africans first. Okay? Today, as we speak, a part of Africa has been carved, and they are creating a kind of a new continent called North Africa, and what's the name if you have forgotten? Encompassing the Israel, MENA, Middle East and North Africa. They are creating that kind of zone, covering all the Islamic Arabic countries in Northern Africa, and adding them to those countries, then creating a kind of continent for them. Now, under such circumstances, allegiances shift, connections shift, and that is the problem facing the after. And whoever is an African who has been given the privilege to lead such organizations have work to do. And that work means that they need to go to African countries, do a campaign, a conscious campaign to promote the ideals for the political class to buy into it. Of course, the West is not sleeping because they know the implications of that to them. To get in the buy-in of the citizens. And there are these inter-African or intra-African organizations that are emerging, promoting the ideals of Pan-Africanism. Those organizations have to make things like that their project. Inter-African trade, inter-African commuting, all that have to be consciously promoted. And Ghana, where the AFTA is headquartered, need to champion that idea. How we do it, we can have conversations about that. But the point is that it is not happening because there's no commitment to it. Our mindset has not been programmed for it. And our social dealings, economic metrics do not incorporate it in ways that will make it functional. So we are pretending to do it, which is okay, but we need to go to the next step of doing it well. I like the Methodists when they say, if it must be done,
it must be done well. Okay.
And I think that it is important we recognize that, that we cannot just be putting things on paper without giving practical effect to them. That's why I have said that these institutions have to be left to technocrats, professionals, to handle. If they handle it, we can have some success. But if you have a group of presidents, some of whom understand nothing about the economy, some of them have lived their life and seen their days, okay? And look at people, Paul Biya and co. If they go to, sorry to say, if they go to AU session, what do they say? Okay? This guy in Liberia, before he became president, they were calling him Sleepy Joe. Okay? How do these people go to give effect to things like this? They need technocrats. I'm not saying they are not qualified to lead their countries. They are qualified to lead their countries. But when it comes to running the affairs of institutions that are supposed to promote African unity, make the political decision, give way to the technocrats to deal and lead the agenda. And help us achieve the objectives we seek to achieve. Otherwise, we will have problems. But I think that if the AU will do one thing that will change Africa, they need to look for a group of people. One of them is Professor Emeritus Pipim, Professor Lumumba, whom you mentioned, this Arcana woman, and many others who are there to champion a certain agenda of mindset change in Africa.
Okay.
So that we can all begin to see our Africanness and the need to live it, the need to promote it, the need to project it, and the importance that it has for us, and how that can change our social, economic, political situations. And finally, I want to talk about the idea of African cultural embodiments being put at the forefront. I don't believe that Africa had good culture, okay? We have cultures that were beautiful, but we, just like the mindset thing, we have been trained to think that everything African is devilish, everything African is evil, everything African is black. Okay, yeah. We have even been conscientized. One day I asked a colleague in the UK who called me a black man, and I said, "Did you go to school?" He said, "Yes." I said, "In your classroom, did they teach you that this color is black? And did they teach you that your color is white? Is that how white looks like?" You know, we have been conscientized. Even if I am black, what is wrong with the color black? Okay, so we have been conscientized to hate ourselves, to undermine ourselves, to see ourselves as inferior to everything, and then we cannot just see any potential in ourselves. We see the potential outside. I'm telling you, if there is an announcement that you are going to lead this program, and then there is an announcement that the same program will be led by another journalist or broadcaster who is from UK or Canada or something, concurrently, you will see what people will watch. Our football, we don't respect it. Our dance, our everything has been discarded because we don't know our identity. We don't know our history. We don't know our pride. We have lost a sense of ourselves. Okay. And that needs to be corrected.
All right. And Doc, you said that when I asked whether it's due to the slavery, you said that some of these challenges with the mindset and that inferiority that we have, I mean, let's call it, we have that inferiority, it's also due to slavery. How can you explain that for us?
Yeah, it's very easy, but he made a point about how a new continent is emerging, you know, with North Africa to the east, northeast. I know that years ago it was called Middle East. You see, it has been very difficult for the Western world to accept Egypt as Black Africa's land.
Why?
You know, forgetting that you cannot draw the map of Africa without the entirety of Africa, encompassing Egypt, beyond Egypt, the Nile, the Indian Ocean, Mediterranean, Atlantic.
Atlantic, yeah.
You know, it's simple. Because history tells us that civilization began in Africa. And they don't want us to know that Herodotus, the father of history, came to Africa to learn from Egypt. They also don't want us to know that Alexander the Great came to Africa to learn the Egyptian civilization.
Aristotle and the rest.
Aristotle, and then Napoleon Bonaparte. It was when he came to Africa, Egypt, lost the battle of the pyramids to the British, that he went back to France and then introduced the course Egyptology in Europe. And when he came to Africa, what shocked him was that all the statues, human statues that he found were having flat notes. When your nose is flat and not pointed, it speaks to him that that civilization was a black civilization. So let's find a way of destroying it. So wherever he found one, he sent a soldier to chop the nose off. When I was young, I was called Napoleon Anokye. And all those watching me who attended Kumasi High School with me or were in Commonwealth Hall with me, they called me Napo.
You didn't like the name?
Then I have to drop it when you read this, and then you still want to carry that name. You understand? So I dropped it. Yeah. You understand? In fact, the entirety of Egyptian civilization is black civilization. And it is only through this black civilization that we can say that whites have done everything possible, not being able to solve certain scientific things. All European things have been solved, but not, for example, how and why the pyramids were built, and how a human body can be treated such that after 3,000 years, it could be as it is.
Yeah.
So that was the way it was. And then these people at a certain level, motivated by two factors, decided to rape this continent. The first one is to make the black person, the African, believe that he's nobody. He's a second-class human being. Even before I continue, do you know that almost all the Catholic rules, the religious sacraments, were written by an African, St.
Really?
Augustine of Hippo. Yes, St. Augustine of Hippo. Hippo is in North Africa. He wrote all the things that the Catholic Church is using. So therefore, and then they have produced so many black popes. You understand? And then don't forget that Peter, Jesus Christ, Samson, John the Baptist, they were black people. You see, the white hair is so light, naturally light, that there is no way you can make it what the Rastafarians call Rasta or dreadlocks.
Dreadlocks, yes.
It is only when you are black or you have one drop of blackness in you that when the Bible, the prophet say, and the child that you born, let no come touch it, say, then that child will begin to develop dreadlocks. It is only when you are black. And not long ago, Putin has shown it that the Europeans know that Jesus Christ, all of them were black people, and they had to change it. Why would they change it? I said motivated by two factors. The first one is racism. You know, the very conscious effort to make the black man believe that he's next to an animal.
Yeah.
And they indoctrinated us such that there's a fancy proverb that says, and then there are plenty trees all that. This are matching the day and others. Me brony, me brony. You understand? That is somebody I idolize. Why not me bibini? Anyway, Amache the day has later changed. You understand? Yeah. So motivated by racism, that they needed to grow. And if you will need to grow, you will need to make yourself luxurious, to put the mind at ease. And to do that, somebody will have to work for you. So let us go there. And then the second reason was industrialization. They needed to industrialize. And that was the reason why they came. See, people call it slave trade. Don't ever use the term slave trade again.
But what?
It is European slavery or the enslavement of the African. If it was trade, we would have had a rich buyer and then a rich seller. But in this case, the 350-year slavery of the African enriched Europe. You know that triangular...
But they did this without consent, did they not?
It was not with our conscious consent.
But with what's consent then?
Call it the negative consent.
But because still without consent. I mean, even it depended on how ignorant we were, but we actually gave it that approval for them to do that.
You see, if somebody comes to you, say that you fought, let's say, the bonus, they fought the dangerous, you defeat, let's say, the dangerous. Okay, the people, please, we can give you more arms. We can give you more European goods. And then we take the people. The person agrees, but he doesn't know the harm he's doing to his brother. And this continued for 300 years and 50 years. And mind you, it was not real trade. There was violence associated with it. That was the reason why about 15 million people lost their lives in the course of the catching of the slaves.
Let me announce the phone line so that our viewers can also join us in this conversation. You can call us on 020-380-3174, 020-380-3174, 020-380-3174. The number is on your screen. You can give us a call to that and share your thoughts with us. And if you have any question at all for our guest, we'll gladly take it. Just finish up, yes.
Yes, so you see, taking slaves from Africa and then taking them to the Americas to do plantation, taking raw materials to Europe, do processed goods and dump them in Africa, immediately brought about the Industrial Revolution. Because with plenty surplus goods from America, you needed to process it. And they became scientific. technologies. In the case of Africa, consciously, they killed African initiative and industrialization. I read from somewhere that certain fancies were trying to plant cotton in order to sell to the Europeans in the forts and castles. And they caught those people and sold them into slavery. Why? Because the moment they encourage African initiative, their industries will die. And to this date, my brother, that thing has not changed, that Africa must be a place only for the production of raw materials. So 350 years made Europe extremely rich, and it is still rich, and it is the slavery.
Okay, let's go to the phone lines and let's talk to Philip, who's reaching out from Kuwait City. Philip, hello to you, and thank you for joining us. Let's hear you.
Yeah, very good evening to your cherished viewers and then myself. Yeah, I'll go to my local. Yaw Anokye, that was you move on when church Palmo, Wama, Ghana, Yenzuma. Yeah, that was we are proud of you. Keep it up.
Madame Come, that was in Yamle Hilao.
Okay, all right. Okay, all right. Was saying he was.
Thank you to us.
Okay.
And then we wanted to say it in Zima because in Zima, some people they like their own first.
Anyway, yeah. Okay, all right. Let's move on to the theme for this celebration, or this celebration of put it aside, the Africa Union Day, 62 years. The theme is justice for Africans and people of African descent through reparation. And a message coming from the, I think the chairperson of the African Union Commission, His Excellency Muhammad Ali Yusuf, actually, and I quote, he says that justice for Africans and people of African descent through reparation, which is the thing, honors the memory of those who suffered under slavery and colonization, with asserting the rights of Africans and its diaspora to truth, justice, and restoration. Whilst justice and reparation remains long overdue, the chairperson also says that Africa will not only be held hostage by the pain of the past. Let's talk to someone on the line. After that, we'll come to our next conversation, which hopefully is going to be the final stretch on reparation, which is the theme for this year's AU Day, which is today. Hello, good evening to you.
Yeah, good evening.
Hello, what's your name?
I'm Botti from Nwa.
Good. Botti, let's hear you.
What the lawyer is saying, what they say is the right thing. You know, this European change our mind to, and they make us look inferior. I've read enough about all this kind of thing, and they need to inculcate that. We have to inculcate that in our school system. Only if they do that. And you know, we are very lazy as people in reading. We have to read a lot. When we read a lot, we will know more about all these things. When you are hurting your friend, you know you are hurting your friend. But because we have been divided, they use religion also. They use religion. That was their tactics. They use religion to separate us. So we have to know all this kind of things.
All right.
If they can come together.
All right, Botti, thank you. Thank you very much for joining us, and thanks a lot for your input. Prof, reparation. Our president talked a lot about it.
Before Prof goes to reparation, let me just react to what he said.
Botti, yes,
that we
quickly.
have to read a lot.
Yes.
Even reading the Bible alone will tell you that Judaism as a religion was developed in Africa, was developed in Egypt. Yes. Joseph's father and then his family members who came, they were just about 60. After 400 years, when they were going, they were about 60,000, and they had developed the Jewish religion from our continent.
Yes.
Christianity too was developed here. When Jesus Christ was a small boy, they brought him to Africa. Do you know how long he spent here? So please, we should all read. And starting from the Bible that everybody knows, we'll get to know that it's the black man that built world civilization and world religion.
Okay, all right. Prof, I mean, just to bring the whole conversation of reparation to perspective, the definition is that the action of making amends for a wrong one has done by providing payment on other assistance to those who have been wronged. So, in other words, we are actually expecting some bit of, let's say, payment or something from those who have actually wronged us. But let's talk to Nikwe, and then after that, Prof, you address this question. Nikwe, good afternoon, good evening to you. Let's hear you.
Evening, sir.
Let's hear you.
I think I'm happy to contribute to the discussion.
Great.
In fact, when we were young, you can see that there is food called Ekwe Baby.
Yes.
We have ASCO.
Yes.
We have all those things. Today, we are not enjoying them. But I think that if there is growth, those things we could have used our local food, then modernize it, process it in such a way that today you can have ASCO process, you can buy ASCO, you can buy Ekwe Baby and all those things. But you see that because we shifted from Africa perspective, we entered into the European. You see that you can buy baked beans and all those things, which we have them already. We could have used a lot. Africa has its own technology, but we have shifted and thrown away. So I think that it is important for policymakers, leaders of countries to come together, look at Africa perspective, especially when we come to TVET. Now, look at TVET, look at technology, building bridges and all those things. Even though we borrow ideas, but our own Africa perspective, how we construct our own buildings and all those things should be seen to be initiated. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Reparation. Is there a need for something like that as far as slavery, we say, has come to an end in a way so many years ago, thousands of years ago?
Well, people argue that slavery hasn't come to an end. It exists in different forms, but let's agree it's ended. But in the first place, reparations, for me, I don't look at it in terms of monetary terms. In the first place, those who cause harm to Africa should accept and acknowledge that they've done Africa some wrong. In fact, significant wrong. And that they are responsible for the situation that Africa finds itself in today. That's number one. Number two, the mindset change thing that we are talking about is important because there are some Africans.
Prof, all right. Since we've activated the phone lines, we'll be just going phone lines. So just pardon me with that. Let's talk to Gabriel, who's reaching out from Accra, Newtown. Gabriel, good evening to you. Let's hear you.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Gabriel, calling from Pig Farm.
Pig Farm, good. Gabriel, let's hear you.
Good evening to your cherished listener. Until the African leaders try to work together, try to unite themselves. That's where we'll get to where we're supposed to go to. You see, like if they're having an African Union meeting, I don't know what they discuss there. They'll just come, block the road and go back to their various countries. If Africa can use one currency, Africa can connect to railways and all that. If I'm trading from Ghana to Nigeria, at least I can use railway it will be faster for me. So if Ghana can connect to other parts of the countries with train and all that, I think it will be better for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gabriel. Yes, Prof, you can continue.
Yes.
That you don't see that as monetary payment, sort of, yes.
Yeah. There's need for that acknowledgement to happen. Number two, as I was saying, there are some Africans, and unfortunately highly educated Africans, who some of them have had good experience in politics, who say that we should have stayed under colonialism for
a lot of people say that too, my brother.
And you ask yourself, is this person reasoning? Sorry to say that. Because do you even understand the word colonialism and what it does to the human being? Okay? When you are colonized, you don't have a will of your own. In fact, you are treated as if you are not a human being.
Good. Okay. Let's go to Damfa and talk to Gideon. Gideon, good evening to you. Let's hear you.
Yeah, good evening, sir.
Yes, Gideon, let's hear you.
Please, I want to also add my voice.
Please do.
Thank you, Professor Mensah and then Dr. Yaw Anokye, for giving us an insight. But I think the Africans, we have been mentally switched. That is one thing.
Yeah.
To emancipate ourselves from mental slavery, we have to conscientize ourselves. If we don't conscientize ourselves, we are going to be. I read a book about one woman called Adzahlie, Age as Imperialism. And you could see that they are using aid as a form of neo-colonization, so trying to enslave us. So we have to emancipate ourselves mentally so that we can also sustain or we can also achieve our goals as an African country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gideon. Yes, Prof.
So otherwise, if somebody gives Ghana, Europe can wake up tomorrow. Let me give this scenario. It's a book written by one a woman called one Moyo Dambisa. About the title is Dead Aid. He said if the aid taps are turned off, what will happen to Africa? Europe, America,
US aid has actually been just taken off.
US, America, and Europe can wake up. Western Europe can wake up tomorrow and say, we are giving every African country 1 trillion in reparations for the loss we caused. Corruption. Okay? We'll finish it. Nothing significant will happen. So we need that mindset change to know that we are a people in search of a future. And that we need to shape a future for ourselves. Okay? There's one thing I will encourage this government in Ghana to do. They should go back to that idea of a national security policy. Okay? And develop a national security strategy that will make sure that if we are doing education, it's connected to a certain national agenda. Health is connected to that national agenda. Agriculture is connected to that national agenda. Okay? The previous government did something like that, and I think after writing the material, they didn't look at it again. Because, for example, it says that security education shall be introduced at all levels of education. They left power, it has not been introduced anywhere. So I think that until Africa comes to the realization that we are Africans and we have a common future that we have to pursue at individual and group level. If they give us money today, we waste it. Okay? That's number one. Number two, reparations have to be in the context of our cultural artifacts, our history that has been destroyed. It has to be retold.
Okay. Let's talk to Sheikh Larry, who's reaching us from Nima. Sheikh, salamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Great. Let's hear you, Sheikh.
How are you?
Very well. Thank you.
I'm interested in that program. I wanted to contribute.
Please, let's hear you.
You know, we are all Pan-Africanism.
Let's hear you, Sheikh.
Yeah. I'm looking at something here. You know, Africa, what we have to do now is to stop the blame game.
Okay.
Is to stop the blame game. You know, the more we continue to blame the white man for slave trade, whatever, you know, in fact, the more we feel inferior. You see? Now, what we should do as Africans, we should attack. You know, we should be ourselves. Africa, after all, African is not the first continent to indulge in slavery or something like this. You see, for 400 years, we keep blaming the white man, and he's still colonizing us. All we do is to cry. You know? So what we have to do is that Africa, we have to fight our own people that are surrounding us. You know? We have to fight corruption. We have to fight certain things that is going on in Africa that don't make us unite. After all, no African will say, I don't want African unity. Every African wants African unity. Why can't we unite? It's because they program us. They program our conscience. You know, always is the cause of the white man. White man should sit aside. Let us be ourselves. You know, starting to make sure that, you know, we begin to, you know, eliminate certain people among us. I think that instead of fighting for Africa, it's now time to die or kill for Africa.
Okay.
That is what will help us.
All right, Sheikh. Thank you.
Instead of fighting for Africa,
thank you.
Rather stand and die.
All right.
Or kill for Africa.
Sheikh, thank you.
You know, we can all die at the same time. Some may die and some may live.
All right, Sheikh. Thank you very much.
All we want is success.
Thank you.
That is all.
Thank you. I mean, that's an interesting point coming from Sheikh, though. Yeah. At least also falls within this conversation of reparation. There are some who actually think that he said, you know what, there's no need for us to be having such conversation. Let's just move on and forge our future together. Again, on reparation, let me just speak your thoughts.
That's the point I'm making, that it's not about getting money back. People acknowledging this is what we have done and redoing, undoing those things. But more importantly, the reparation we can give to ourselves is that consciousness that we have to take our future into our own hands.
Yeah.
For example, look at the Ghanaian education system. Look at what is called West African Examination Council.
Yeah.
Look at how that council regulates education in Ghana and in West Africa. This was a colonial institution bequeathed to us. And today, if you go to school in Ghana, you can write your history in English and get 90%. Then they say you fail English, so you can't progress. You write biology, physics, chemistry exam in English and pass. Then they say you got F in English, so you can't progress. Yeah. And you ask ourselves, are we looking for English scholars? They don't understand that the use of that language has its own cultural ethos imposed on us. That is why we dress the way we dress. I'm happy that those of us here are wearing something African. You know, that's why we dress the way we dress. That's why we eat the kind of food we eat. That's why we live our lives the way we live it. Okay? So we need a change in the ways in which we do things. And as I said, if we can dissolve some of those colonial institutions.
All right, let me talk to Kofi Owusu. Kofi, good evening to you.
Evening, brother.
It's the same.
Nyame
now doing Kofi. Let's hear you.
Me patro, me program na mo manager on pa. But he didn't kind of me that me papa no mi na o mo si on mo kasa no wase. Ha so mo program ya ba. Me patro yo kana. Ni na bia e make sense pa na ni na so ko yi papa. But dia ba ko na mpese mbusa. Se se no e wase e twen e ma ye mpani ko e hye bibi ase ni ehunu say in Africa for you bit my bibi. But point ne say o mo mi no o mo si wono. Sorry, if you are not used where you're right. Maybe Papa no more use almost see one. They can start it a bit master. And found only see a bit chance you're putting for you, and I am putting for them. We're gonna beg you to answer it. The entire makers and I say, maybe Papa no you. Me and Casa Mijina from you, so there is a lot of things that I can do. A lot when it comes to invention, when it comes to machines, car, ships, you know, electric cars, electricity building, everything. Man, dedicating my life into all this. My point is say, Obiamwa to say the Africa okay. I say you know my point, but Obiamwa. To me, make us have a papa no direct. Say I didn't see an obi and mamma chance to say like and bring me in. Now me dedicated you bit my best chance here if you want mama. You person here Africa pagan and I and a pagan into me if you bit me up here for if they say Obian Shasia, you're putting for one mudi and when June to me with a bit my. It's to me, no can make the come say, and say, Nanka, from me in. I'm not saying me a better thing will be about come free in. Don't try to gather people. They can do all these things in. You can try for just only 1 year. You don't know more powerful things the way you want. Now, the young say it's not a decision of our own. Now, we are shot everywhere. But now, as a media, hey, me die your son, me name dear, any minute, you know, me every single day. Now, all this thing, I will die and leave it behind. To say now, you're bringing it out. For people to know that this is what we are capable of or what. If you see, I mean, when I did in, When a bill Edin Buddha say we see him, I'm Yaki and Sabum, Yakuku, dear Pessia.
All right.
Men can be by the Catcher Papanum say, and no man, but better my minimum in some more. Within 1 year. You be making difference, man.
Great.
In fact, we will change the face of Africa.
Okay.
But now, honestly, say Nippon be saying
Kofi, we program we are now for a number now. I was screen this room. Now you come up. So, thank you very much, Kofi. Kofi is saying that if we need to wait for our leaders, we might actually be just standing still in terms of our development. So why don't we actually take the entire development into our own hands as Africans to forge ahead rather than sitting down to wait for our leaders. Prof, just finish up then I'll pick Doc's thoughts on reparation, yes.
Something small for Kofi, as he is saying. It is our leaders also need us. Sometimes what the Western world does, what the powers do is that any leader that is standing for Africa, they use the citizens against that leader. They make that leader unpopular. And then, as democracy is, we vote that person out and we continue with the troubled ones. So that's one thing. So it's both ways. But as I was saying, the question of reparations, I am not that enthused about it in terms of financial aspects. But if we can deal with the social, cultural aspects, the political aspects, the ways in which our institutions have been destroyed, the ways in which our leaders have been corrupted, the ways in which our education system has been corrupted, we have on our hands an opportunity to rework those ones. And we can do that. Okay. These are things that we don't need people to come and tell us. We continue rote learning. For example, me in Ghana, the other day I was hearing standard-based education. I said, standard-based education, the world has moved from there long ago. The world is working with outcome-based education, problem-based education. But we have now gone to standards-based education. Standards-based education that requires that if you don't meet the standard, you don't progress. But we have an education system in which we're doing wholesale promotion. So what are you doing there? So we need a certain frame of mindset change rather than just receiving money from outside. It will be good.
All right, I don't think before I come to Doc here, let's talk to Dr. Bediako, who's reaching us from Pokwase. Doc, good evening to you and let's hear you.
Yes, sir. Good evening.
Evening.
Yeah. Yeah, Papa, and downfall. In Omakatakama. Actually, Africa for Abo Oman. Na de mi hunu se ye man no ye sua de ye kasa kra na ye kan so wan kan bro for obi ni so wabon kasa o number bi na we kan no an kan bro for ye so wabon ni ma de but me ko South Africa ma ko China ma ko India ma ko bi
I think we've hello Doc. Unfortunately, we'll pick one more call, and then that will be it for the phone. Doc, reparation. You earlier were talking about the return of our artifacts and all that. I'm sure all falls within that whole conversation.
Yes, and I believe we need the reparations.
Okay.
You know, the Jews after the Second World War, it was just a period of 5-6 years. About 6 million of them were killed. In the case of Africa, 15 million died in the capture, 15 million died in the confinement, 15 million in the Middle Passage en route to America, and 15 million reached. So in all, loss of about 45 million souls in a period of 350 years. We need our money. We should sit down with them, quantify exactly what we want, and then when we have got the money, we will know which country gets out, those in Africa, those in the Caribbean, and wherever, and those in America, how much they should get. We should think about all this, because the Jews have been given reparations, serious reparations. Every year they benefit, and the whole world sympathizes with Israel. Whatever you are doing to Israel, say, hey, everybody sympathizes with them. What about the black man? Nobody sympathizes with us because we don't talk about what they did to us. Are we going to forget that 350 years, economists and then anthropologists say that the population of Africa did not grow for 350 years, and that of Europe and Asia grew too. no civilization, no development in Africa. And the whole Africa was turned into a mayhem, everybody after the other. It destroyed whole communities, whole tribes, whole families for 350 years. Africa was depopulated, and Africa became highly impoverished. And that's why we say it was not a trade. If it is a trade, you see, the one who buys, let's say, the cocoa, becomes very rich because he knows what he uses it for. And then the one who sells also becomes rich because he receives income out of it. In the case of slavery, our people were only empowered to capture our own and then send them away. So after 350 years...
That's how come the black man keeps pulling the same black man down.
That's what they did to us.
Because of slavery, yes.
You understand? Only they pushed here. You see, slavery started seriously when the Napoleonic Wars ended in Europe. And they had plenty arms, no use for them. And they decided to use it in Africa to destroy us. We need heavy reparations, but it starts from acknowledging. And it stopped. You see, some people think the Europeans decided to stop it because they were so humane and they loved us. And they glorified William Wilberforce, Granville Sharp, and then Lord Clarkson, and all Granville Sharp, Clarkson. But they stopped only because they had developed industrially and technologically such that they needed very few human beings to work for them. Machines were working for them. If they had not developed to that level, to today, we will be working for them. So why do you say that we should not go for reparations? Even the fact that we hate each other. When people sit, like, for example, those of us
just hold on for me with that thought. Let's talk to Isaac. Isaac, good evening to you. Let's hear you.
Good evening, sir.
Go, let's hear you, Isaac.
Glory to blessing for this program.
Thank you. Amen.
I want to say, if you did what to form, you say, then you might end because the Marco, Mr. Mankets media for Beticum. The mother was the day cooler, and then you. The son so man no so no omopobotic because we hygienic. And so you are in science when you are more handling what the minute for. Just say, Yaria Koya, but and I am what taken is actually what I need. Obacona, see, I collect it when you Yaria, just a good year. And so we threaten to know what I say education way and no and don't question. I'm also a black man who say, I could point in your unique Yama black man. Yes, when you put it.
So Isaac, thank you. Yes, Doc.
To conclude on that subject, it was Lord Mansfield I wanted to mention, then I momentarily forgot. Now, the artifacts they took away. Look at the Ashanti one, 1874 Sagrenti War, they took those things away. And then the Benin bronze they took away, and then the obelisks from Ethiopia they took away. All those things have both political, social, and religious significance. The African, we are told, is incurably religious. The object of religion, that sacred object, is now taken away. We pray that they bring everything back so that it can make what they animate. And then, because they like it, go to Victoria and Albert Museum in London. I've been there before. There's nothing there which is European, everything from areas they had stolen. And now when they brought the Ashanti artifact, certainly, because you see, to take something from someone who does not give you permission, it means theft. You have stolen it. That's you see, when they entered the Ashanti royal house and took all those things away, ask yourself whether it was the Ashantis who permitted them. You take these things away and you you legislate over it that it doesn't have to live. Now, how do you legalize an otherwise illegality? That is why we need to sit down with them and then ask them to pay us what we deserve. Not only slavery, another, they killed some of our chiefs. There was this famous Bedubonsu II of Ahanta, whose head was slashed, sent to Europe for about 150 years. They have brought the head, the Dutch. They brought it. It is a 37 military hospital. They have to pay heavy reparations to the Ahanta people for the way they humiliated them. When you go to the Nzema people, they had a very famous king called Kekuaka. Because he was wise enough not to have signed the bond of 1844, he told them that all those who have signed the bond, you have sold your birthright to the white man. For black man knowing this, they sent him to Kweko's castle, they killed him. These people will have to sit down with us, help us to rewrite our history, and pay us heavily for what they have done to us. Because many warriors have been displaced. They have lost their stools. They have lost their homelands. They have lost contact with their blood relatives, all because of the white man. And you think he has to go away free because our people are corrupt. Let them bring the money first. When we get the money, we'll know how to use it.
Okay. We have to leave our conversation here. Thank you very much for your time. Grateful for joining us this evening.
Yes.
Your thoughts and all that. Prof, we're also grateful to
Thank you
have
for
a good
having
day
us.
and have a good night. We pray that the good Lord gives us enough strength to start a new working week tomorrow. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you too for joining us. And let's continue with our African conversation and ensure that we do the things that this continent will be proud of, that we are all going to do. But what's important is the mindset. What's important is the mindset. What's important is the mindset. That's the biggest tool you have. If something affects that mindset, something affects the entire body, affects your future, and affects the generations also ahead. So let's work on our mindset and project what's important for this beautiful country of ours, Africa. My name is Sappor. I'll see you when I see you. Good evening. Bye-bye.